Sarah Chung looked out the small window of her shuttle as it moved through space. The stars looked different here, far from Earth. She had been traveling for 3 months to reach this place. Her mission was simple but important. She carried Earth's final offer of peace. The shuttle pilot was nervous. Sarah could see his hands shake on the controls. "Ambassador," he said quietly, "are you sure about this? The Coalition has not been kind to humans before." Sarah touched the datapad in her lap. It held all of humanity's hopes. "We have to try. Marcus, this is our last chance to avoid war." Through the window, she saw their destination. The Zephyrian Coalition station was huge. It looked like a giant crystal floating in space. Light moved through its walls like water. The station was bigger than Earth's moon. Ships from 12 different alien species moved around it like small fish around a whale. "Incoming message," Marcus said. His voice was tight with fear, a strange voice filled the shuttle. It did not sound human at all. The words were cold and sharp. "Human vessel, you will dock at Bay 77. You will follow all rules. Any wrong move will result in destruction." Sarah took a deep breath. "Acknowledge the message, Marcus." The docking bay was enormous. Their small shuttle looked like a toy inside it. As they landed, Sarah saw alien workers moving around. Some looked like giant insects. Others were made of what seemed like living metal. None of them looked friendly. "I should come with you," Marcus said as Sarah stood up. "No, the agreement says I go alone." "Wait here and keep the ship ready." Sarah picked up her case. Inside were documents, gifts, and Earth's final peace offer. "If something goes wrong, you fly home immediately. Tell them what happened." Marcus nodded, but his face was pale. "Good luck, Ambassador." Sarah walked down the shuttle ramp. The air in the bay was different. It smelled like metal and something else she could not name. The gravity was lighter than Earth's. Each step felt strange. 2 Zephyrian guards waited for her. They were tall and thin with blue skin that seemed to glow. Their eyes were black and showed no emotion. One of them spoke without moving its mouth. The words appeared in Sarah's mind. "Follow, do not touch anything, do not speak unless spoken." 2. They walked through long corridors. The walls were transparent and Sarah could see space outside. Other aliens walked past them. Some stopped to stare at the human. Sarah heard whispers in languages she did not understand. She knew they were talking about her. The Coalition had been demanding Earth's surrender for 3 years. They said humans were too dangerous to be left alone in space. They wanted all human colonies shut down. They wanted Earth's military destroyed. They wanted humanity to become slaves. Earth had tried to negotiate. They sent trade offers and scientific knowledge. They tried to show that humans could be good neighbors in space. But the Coalition kept demanding more. Now this meeting was humanity's last hope. They reached a great door made of the same crystal as the station's walls. It was 50 feet tall and covered with symbols that hurt Sarah's eyes to look at. The door opened without any sound. Inside was the council chamber. It was round and huge. 12 platforms hung in the air, each one holding representatives from a different species. In the center was a small platform where Sarah was meant to stand. The Zephyrian guard pointed to the center platform. "Go." Sarah walked to the platform. It rose slowly into the air until she was level with the alien representatives. She looked around at them. Some looked like animals from Earth, but wrong in ways that made her stomach feel sick. Others were so strange she could not understand what she was seeing. At the highest platform sat the High Arbiter of the Zephyrian Coalition. It was bigger than the other Zephyrians. Its blue skin was darker and its black eyes seemed to see everything. When it spoke, its voice filled the entire chamber. "Human," it said, "you have come to surrender your species." Sarah stood straight. She had practiced this moment for months. "I have come to offer peace. Earth wants to live alongside the Coalition as equals." A sound filled the chamber. It took Sarah a moment to realize it was laughter. All 12 species were laughing at her. The sound was terrible. It was not like human laughter at all. The High Arbiter raised one long arm. The laughter stopped instantly. You speak of equals? Your species has existed in space for less than 200 years. We have ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. You are insects compared to us. Sarah opened her case and took out a data crystal. This contains our final offer. We propose trade agreements, shared scientific research, and mutual protection treaties. We can learn from each other. Learn from you? Another representative spoke. This one looked like a giant spider made of metal. What could we possibly learn from primitives who still use chemical rockets? Sarah's heart was beating fast, but she kept her voice calm. We offer something you have lost. We offer innovation, creativity, and the ability to see problems in new ways. Our youth as a species is our strength, not our weakness. The High Arbiter leaned forward. Your youth makes you dangerous. Young species always think they know better than their elders. They start wars, they break peace. They must be controlled before they cause damage. Earth has never started a war with any alien species, Sarah said. We have only defended ourselves when attacked, because we have not given you the chance, said another representative. This one was a floating ball of energy that spoke through vibrations in the air. You will surrender now or face extinction. Sarah felt cold fear in her stomach, but she stood firm. Earth will not surrender. We will not become slaves. We will not abandon our colonies. But we still offer peace. The High Arbiter stood up. It was over 10 feet tall. Then you offer nothing we want. Sarah reached into her case again. She pulled out a small device and activated it. A hologram appeared showing Earth from space. The blue and green planet looked beautiful even here, so far from home. This is what you would destroy, she said. 6 billion humans live on this world. They have families, dreams, hopes for the future. They create art and music and stories. They love and laugh and cry. Is your pride worth destroying all of that? For a moment, the chamber was quiet. Sarah thought maybe she had reached them. Maybe they would listen. Then the High Arbiter spoke again. Your emotions make you weak? Love and hope are diseases that keep species from growing strong. We will cure your people of these weaknesses. Sarah felt something break inside her chest. They would never listen. They had already decided humanity's fate before she arrived. This had all been a show. I see, she said quietly. You never intended to negotiate. You brought me here to watch. May beg. Correct, the High Arbiter said. We wanted to see if humans would grovel for their lives. You have disappointed us. You show too much pride for a species about to die. Sarah looked around the chamber one last time. She saw 12 species that had ruled the galaxy for so long they had forgotten what it meant to grow and change. They were old and tired and afraid of anything new. You want to know what humans are really like? She asked. Her voice was getting louder. We are stubborn. We do not give up. We do not bow down to bullies, and we never, ever forget. The High Arbiter raised its hand. Sarah saw energy building around its fingers. Any last words, Primitive? Sarah thought of Earth. She thought of her daughter playing in the garden behind their house. She thought of Marcus waiting in the shuttle. Probably scared but loyal. She thought of 6 billion humans who were counting on her to bring peace. Yes, she said. I have last words. She stood as tall as she could. Her voice carried to every corner of the great chamber. You have no idea what you have just unleashed. The energy blast hit her before she could say anything else. Her body turned to ash in an instant. The platform where she had stood was empty except for a small pile of dust and her melted datapad. The High Arbiter brushed ash from its robes. Clean this mess up. Send word to our fleets. Begin the attack on Earth in 1 week. Around the chamber, the 12 species nodded in agreement. They had eliminated the last obstacle to their conquest of humanity. Soon, the dangerous young species would be extinct and the galaxy would be safe again. None of them noticed that Sarah's shuttle had already left the station. Marcus had watched everything through the station's public broadcast system. He was already jumping to hyperspace, racing back to Earth with news of what had happened. The Coalition representatives filed out of the chamber, talking about how easy it had been to deal with the humans. They made plans for dividing up human territory and resources. They laughed about the ambassador's final words. They should have been afraid instead. In the depths of space, Marcus's shuttle flew toward Earth as fast as its engines could push. It, in the cargo hold, hidden where no one would think to look, was a small recording device. It had captured everything that happened in the chamber. Soon all of humanity would know that their ambassador had been murdered. They would know that the coalition had never intended to make peace. They would know that everything they had tried to build in space was about to be destroyed, and then they would decide what to do about it. The coalition had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They thought they knew everything about war and conquest. They had destroyed many species before, but they had never fought humans before. They were about to learn why that was important. Marcus burst through the doors of the United Earth Council chamber. His clothes were dirty, and his face was pale from 3 months of hard travel. The council members looked up from their meeting with surprise. "Ambassador Chun is dead," he said. His voice was raw from exhaustion. "They killed her." "They never intended to make peace." The chamber erupted in shocked voices. President Martinez stood up from her chair at the head of the table. "Slow down, Marcus. Tell us everything." Marcus activated his recording device. The hologram filled the chamber, showing Sarah's last moments. The council members watched in horror as the High Arbiter murdered Earth's ambassador. They heard Sarah's final words. "You have no idea what you have just unleashed." When the recording ended, the chamber was silent for a long moment. "They laughed," said Council Member Wong, his voice filled with anger. "They laughed when she died." "How long before?" "Their fleets arrive?" President Martinez asked. 1 week, Marcus said, maybe less. General Harrison leaned forward. "Our military cannot fight the coalition. They have ships from 12 species. We have barely colonized 50 worlds." "Then what do you suggest?" President Martinez asked. "That we surrender?" Dr. Elena Vasquez, Earth's chief scientist, had been quiet during the discussion. Now she spoke up. "There is another option. Project Unity has been ready for 6 months. We have been waiting for the right moment to implement it." The other council members looked at her with confusion. Project Unity was classified at the highest levels. Most of them had never heard of it. "Explain," President Martinez said. Dr. Vasquez stood up and activated her own hologram. It showed a complex diagram of the human brain connected to quantum computers. "For the past 10 years, we have been developing technology that can link human minds together. Not just communication, but true unity of thought and purpose." "Mind control?" Council Member Wong asked with disgust. "No," Dr. Vasquez said. "Not control, connection. Every human would remain themselves, but they would also be part of something larger. We could share knowledge instantly across light years. We could coordinate actions across the entire species without delay." "General." Harrison frowned. "That sounds like science fiction." "So did space travel once?" Dr. Vasquez replied. "The technology works. We have tested it on volunteers. The problem is that it requires a powerful emotional trigger to activate properly. The neural pathways need to be opened by strong feelings shared across the entire species." President Martinez was beginning to understand. "You mean like the anger and grief from Sarah's murder?" "Exactly. Every human who sees that recording will feel the same emotions. Rage at the injustice, grief for our dead ambassador, fear for our future. Those emotions shared by 6 billion people at the same moment could provide the power we need." The chamber was quiet as the council members considered this. Finally, President Martinez spoke. "What would happen to us?" "To humanity? We would become something new," Dr. Vasquez said honestly. "Still human, but more than human. Our individual minds would remain, but we would also be part of a collective consciousness. We could think faster, act with perfect coordination, and access the knowledge of our entire species. And if it goes wrong?" General Harrison asked. Dr. Vasquez looked at him sadly. "If it goes wrong, we die as individuals instead of dying as Slaves. President Martinez looked around the table. All in favor? Every hand rose. Then God help us all, she said. Begin Project Unity. Within hours, the recording of Sarah's death was broadcast to every human world. People stopped what they were doing to watch their ambassador murdered in cold blood. In homes and offices, on ships and space stations, 6 billion humans felt the same emotions at the same moment. Rage, grief, and a burning desire for justice. On Mars, Dr. James Okafor was working in his laboratory when the broadcast began. He watched in horror as Sarah Chun was killed for asking for peace. When it ended, he found that his hands were shaking with anger, but something else was happening too. He could hear voices in his mind, not his own thoughts, but the thoughts of other humans. His assistant in the next room, his wife back on Earth. Strangers on the other side of the solar system, all of them thinking the same thing. They will pay for this. On the colony world of New Shanghai, Farmer Liu Wei was harvesting rice when every screen in the colony showed the same terrible image. The ambassador's death hit him like a physical blow. He had met Sarah Chun once, years ago, when she visited his world. She had been kind and funny and full of hope for humanity's future among the stars. Now she was dead. Murdered by aliens who thought humans were nothing more than insects, Liu Wei felt something awakening in his mind. Connections forming with other humans he had never met. Knowledge flowing in that was not his own. He knew, without being told, that every human settlement was receiving the same message. Every human was feeling the same pain, and they were all deciding what to do about it. Dr. Vasquez watched the neural activity monitors in the Project Unity control room. Lines of energy were appearing on the screens, connecting human minds across impossible distances. The quantum computers were working overtime to manage the flow of information. "It's working," she whispered. "The network is forming." But something was happening that she had not expected. The collective consciousness was not just linking existing human minds. It was changing them, making them more than they had been before. On every human world, people stopped their normal activities. Farmers left their fields. Workers left their factories. Soldiers left their barracks. They all walked to the nearest communication centers and began coordinating with perfect precision. Children were evacuated from border worlds. Essential personnel were moved to protected locations. Military assets were redistributed according to plans that no single human could have created, but that 6 billion minds working together understood perfectly. And through it all, not a single word was transmitted over normal communication channels. The coalition was watching, of course. Their spy satellites recorded everything. Their agents reported on human activities. But they saw nothing that made sense. High Arbiter Zachthal received reports in his private chambers aboard the coalition flagship. "The humans are moving," his intelligence officer reported. "But we cannot determine their strategy." "They have no strategy," Zachthal said dismissively. "They are primitives running around in panic. What of their military preparations?" "That is the strange part, High Arbiter. They appear to be dismantling their defenses. Ships are being recalled from patrol duties. Ground-based weapons are being shut down. Some colonies appear to be evacuating completely." Zachthal was pleased. "They are surrendering without a fight. Excellent. It will save us the trouble of destroying them completely." But the intelligence officer looked troubled. "Sir, there is something else. We have lost contact with our deep space monitoring stations near human territory." "Lost contact?" "They simply stopped transmitting. No distress signals, no attack warnings, just silence." Zachthal waved a dismissive hand. "Equipment failures. The humans are not capable of attacking our monitoring stations without us detecting it." The intelligence officer hesitated. "Sir, we sent investigation teams to 3 of the stations. The teams never reported back." For the first time, Zachthal felt a small stab of concern. "How many stations have gone silent?" 17, sir, all along the border with human space." Zachthal stood up from his chair. "Send a full squadron to investigate. I want to know what happened to those stations." "Yes, sir." How soon should we expect their report? Within 6 hours. And increase patrols along all borders with human space. If the humans are planning some desperate last attack, we will be ready. But 6 hours passed, and the squadron did not report back. Neither did the increased patrols. More coalition ships were sent to investigate. They also vanished without a trace. In the coalition command center, alarm bells were beginning to sound. Admiral Vextar, the coalition's military commander, stared at the tactical display in disbelief. Red indicators showed missing ships and stations all along the human border. How many ships have we lost? He asked his aide. 47 vessels, sir, including 2 heavy cruisers and a battle carrier. And the humans? What are they doing? Nothing. Sir, their ships remain in dock. Their colonies show no military activity. We are not even detecting normal communications traffic. Admiral Vextar had fought in dozens of campaigns against primitive species. He had never seen anything like this. Get me a direct link to the Andromedan hegemony. They maintain neutral monitoring stations throughout this sector. The communication link opened, showing the face of Ambassador Tlack of the Andromedans. The Andromedans were ancient and wise, older even than the Coalition. They rarely involved themselves in galactic politics, Admiral, Tlack said. We have been expecting your call. What do your senses show in human space? Tlack's expression was troubled. That is difficult to answer. Our instruments detect massive energy signatures moving through human territory. But they do not match any known technology. Energy signatures from what? We do not know. The readings are unlike anything in our databases. Admiral, we strongly recommend that you halt your advance on human space until you understand what you are facing. Admiral Vextar's pride would not allow him to show fear to an alien neutral. The humans are primitives. Whatever they are doing, we can handle it. Perhaps, Tlack said quietly. But consider this, in the past 72 hours, every human world has gone completely silent. No communications, no transmissions, no energy signatures that our sensors can interpret. It is as if 6 billion humans have simply vanished. Then our work is done for us? No, Admiral, they have not vanished. Our long-range sensors still detect life signs on human worlds. 6 billion humans are still alive. They are simply not behaving like any other species we have ever observed. The communication link closed, leaving Admiral Vextar staring at his tactical display. The red indicators continued to multiply as more coalition assets vanished near human space on Earth. In the Project Unity Control Center, Dr. Vasquez watched the readings with amazement and growing fear. The network was working better than she had ever dreamed. Human consciousness was expanding beyond anything they had thought possible, but it was also changing in ways she did not understand. Doctor, her assistant called out, you need to see this. On the main screen, a map of human space appeared. But it was not a normal map. It showed something else entirely. Energy patterns that connected every human world. Pathways that existed in dimensions beyond normal spacetime. What am I looking at? Dr. Vasquez asked. I think, her assistant said slowly, we are looking at the birth of something new. Something that has never existed before in the galaxy. Through the quantum network, Dr. Vasquez could feel the thoughts of every human. 6 billion minds thinking as one, but each still maintaining their individuality. It was beautiful and terrifying at the same time. And in the depths of that vast collective consciousness, she could feel something else growing. Something that was human, but more than human. Something that was preparing for what came next. The Coalition had killed Earth's ambassador. They had laughed at humanity's offer of peace. They had chosen war over cooperation. Now they would learn what humans could become when they chose to become it. Together, the silence was almost over. Admiral Vextar stood in the command center of the Coalition flagship, Eternal Glory. 3 days had passed since they lost contact with human space. His fleet of 2,000 ships hung in formation at the edge of the solar system that contained Earth. Sir, his communications officer reported, we are receiving a transmission from Kepler 442b. Kepler 442b was a Zephyrian agricultural world. 18 billion Zephyrians lived there, growing food for half the coalition fleet. It was one of their most important worlds. Put it through, Admiral Vextar ordered. The hologram showed Captain Relmuth, the Zephyrian in charge of planetary defense. His blue skin looked pale, and his black eyes were wide with fear. Admiral, Relmuth said, his mental voice shaking. Something is happening to our world. The sunrise this morning brought ... darkness. Explain yourself, Vextar demanded. The darkness came from the east, with the dawn. It spreads across the land like water, but it does not destroy. It changes everything it touches. Plants, animals, buildings, everything becomes part of it. The transmission began to break up with static. Through the interference, they could hear screaming in the background. Captain, what is your status? Vextar asked. The darkness has reached our cities. My people are not dying. They are becoming something else. I can feel their minds changing. Admiral, I think I understand now. This is not an attack. This is absorption. The transmission cut to static. Re-establish contact, Vextar ordered. Sir, all communication with Kepler 442b has ceased. Long-range sensors show the planet is still there, but we cannot get any readings from the surface. Admiral Vextar felt cold fear creeping up his spine. Send a reconnaissance squadron to investigate. Yes, sir. 2 hours later, the squadron reached Kepler 442b. What they found defied everything they knew about warfare. Commander Nashville led the reconnaissance mission. As his ship entered the planet's atmosphere, he could see the world below. But it was wrong. The entire surface was covered in a black substance that seemed to move and flow like liquid, but it was not destroying the planet. The mountains were still there, the rivers still flowed, but everything was changed. Landing sensors detect no hostile activity, his pilot reported, but also no normal life signs. The readings are ... unusual. They landed near what had been the capital city. Commander Nashville led a team of soldiers out of the ship. The city was still there, but it was different. The buildings looked the same, but they were made of the black substance. The streets were clear and clean, but empty. Where is everyone? One of his soldiers asked as if in answer to his question. Figures began to emerge from the buildings. They walked slowly, calmly. Nashville raised his weapon, then stopped in shock. The figures were Zephyrians, but they were changed. Their blue skin had turned black like the substance covering the planet. Their eyes no longer showed individual thought. They moved together as if controlled by the same mind. One of them approached Nashville's team. When it spoke, its voice was different, deeper. It echoed strangely. You should not have come here, it said. But now that you have, you will understand. What happened to you? Nashville demanded. We became more than we were, the changed Zephyrian replied. We are still ourselves, but we are also part of something greater. We see now what we could not see before. More of the changed beings appeared from every direction. They did not carry weapons or show hostility. They simply stood there, watching. The humans did this, Nashville said. How? The humans did not do this to us, the being said. We chose this. When the darkness came, it offered us a choice. We could remain separate and alone, or we could join something beautiful, something that spans the stars. Nashville backed toward his ship. You are under enemy control. We are under our own control for the first time in our lives? Come with us, coalition soldiers. See what we have seen. Feel what we have felt. The changed beings began to move closer. Not threatening, but determined? Nashville and his team ran for their ship. Take off, he shouted to his pilot. Take off. Now? As their ship rose into the sky, Nashville looked down at the planet below. The entire world was covered in the black substance. 18 billion Zephyrians were now part of whatever the humans had become. Send a message to Admiral Vextar, he ordered. Tell him the planet is lost. Tell him the Zephyrians are still alive, but they are not ours anymore. But the ship never made it back to the fleet. As it reached the edge of the planet's atmosphere, it simply stopped responding to communications. Long-range sensors showed it was still there, But it was not moving and it was not transmitting. Admiral Vextar waited for 6 hours for the reconnaissance report. When it did not come, he sent another squadron, then another. None of them reported. Back, sir, his tactical officer reported. We have a priority message from Coalition Command. High Arbiter Zachthel's image appeared on the communication screen. His usually calm expression showed cracks of worry. Admiral, report on the situation at Kepler 442b. Unknown, High Arbiter. We have lost contact with the planet and all ships. Sent to investigate. I recommend we consider the world hostile until we understand what happened. That is no longer an option, Zachthel said grimly. We have received similar reports from 3 other worlds. Andorium Prime, the hegemony mining colonies, and the trade station at Beta Centauri. All have gone silent in the same way. Admiral Vextar felt his blood turn cold. High Arbiter, those worlds are light years apart. How could the humans attack? All of them at once? We do not think they are attacking, Zachthel replied. Our scientists believe they are doing something else. Something we do not understand. What are your orders? Retreat to Coalition core space immediately. Recall all ships from the border regions. We need to understand what we are facing before we lose any more worlds. The transmission ended, leaving Admiral Vextar staring at his tactical display. 4 Coalition worlds had fallen in a single day. Not destroyed, but changed into something else. Something that still contained their populations, but was no longer part of the Coalition. Navigation, set course for Coalition core space, maximum speed, yes sir. As the massive fleet began to turn away from Earth, Admiral Vextar wondered if they were already too late. On the bridge of the Coalition science vessel, Truthseeker, Dr. Malfi worked frantically to understand what was happening. She was the Coalition's best expert on alien technology. If anyone could figure out what the humans were doing, it would be her. Computer, analyze all available data on the affected worlds, she ordered. The ship's artificial intelligence processed terabytes of information in seconds. Analysis complete. Common factors identified. Display findings. A holographic model appeared showing the 4 lost worlds. All affected planets show the presence of an unknown energy field that exists partially outside normal spacetime. This field appears to convert matter and energy into a new state that maintains its original structure while becoming part of a larger network. Network? Quantum entanglement patterns suggest that all affected areas are connected at the subatomic level. Matter on one world appears to be in instant communication with matter on all other affected worlds. Dr. Malfi stared at the display in growing horror. Are you saying the humans have created some kind of galaxy-spanning organism? Unknown. The phenomenon does not match any known biological or technological patterns. However, intercepted. Communications from the affected areas suggest that individual consciousness remains intact while becoming part of a collective intelligence. Show me the communications. The speakers filled with voices, but they were not individual voices. Millions of beings speaking in perfect unison, their words overlapping but somehow distinct. We are still ourselves, the voices said. But we are also more. We see the connections between all things. We understand what we were too small to understand before. Dr. Malfi's hands shook as she worked her controls. Computer, estimate. The rate of expansion. Current data suggests exponential growth. If the expansion continues at its present rate, it will reach Coalition core worlds within 14 standard days. 14 days. Dr. Malfi stared at the projection showing how the phenomenon would spread across Coalition space. World after world would be consumed by the growing network. Trillions of lives would be absorbed into whatever the humans had become. Computer, send all data to Coalition Command. Priority 1. Transmission sent. Dr. Malfi sat back in her chair, feeling exhausted. The Coalition had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years. They had conquered dozens of species and absorbed their technology. They had thought themselves masters of the universe. Now they faced something they had never encountered before. Not an enemy they could fight, but a transformation they could. not stop. In the depths of space, the phenomenon continued to spread. Ships that came too close to affected worlds simply stopped responding to outside communication. Their crews were still alive, but they were no longer part of the coalition. The Andromedan hegemony, watching from their neutral territory, sent urgent warnings to all spacefaring species. Avoid all areas of space previously controlled by humans or recently affected coalition worlds. Something is growing there that we do not understand. But the warnings came too late for many. Trade ships, exploration vessels, and military patrols that strayed too close to the expanding zone simply vanished from normal space. Not destroyed, but changed into something else. Something that was still recognizably the same ships and crews, but was no longer part of the galaxy as everyone understood it. High Arbiter Zaxthel stood in the Coalition's greatest war room, surrounded by representatives from all 12 member species. Holographic displays showed the spreading phenomenon in real time. "Honored colleagues," he said, "we face a threat unlike any in our history. The humans have not simply attacked us. They have become something that we cannot fight with conventional weapons. What do you propose?" asked the representative from the crystalline thought weavers. "Total evacuation of all worlds within 50 light years of the affected zones. We retreat to our core systems and attempt to understand what we are facing, and if the phenomenon reaches our core worlds?" asked the representative from the machine intelligence known as the Eternal Calculation. Zaxthel was quiet for a long moment. "Then we may have to consider the unthinkable. We may have to surrender." The word hung in the air like a poison. The Coalition had never surrendered to anyone. They were the masters of the galaxy. But as they watched the tactical displays, they saw their empire shrinking by the hour. World after world falling to something that did not destroy, but absorbed. Something that turned their own people against them simply by offering them a choice to become part of something larger. And at the center of it all, Earth continued to orbit its sun in complete silence. No communications, no energy signatures, no signs of life that their instruments could detect. But the phenomenon spreading from Earth carried the thoughts and feelings of 6 billion humans. Humans who had been offered peace and been answered with murder. Humans who had tried to build a place in the galaxy and been told they were too dangerous to exist. Humans who had decided that if the galaxy would not accept them as they would become something the galaxy could not ignore. The reckoning had begun, and the Coalition was learning what humanity looked like when it stopped asking for permission to exist. Dr. Malthy worked alone in her laboratory aboard the science vessel, Truth Seeker. For 7 days she had studied the phenomenon that was consuming Coalition space. Her fellow researchers had fled to the core worlds, but she had stayed. Someone had to understand what humanity had become. The data was impossible but undeniable. The spreading darkness was not technology as the Coalition understood it. It was something else entirely. Something that existed partly in normal space and partly in dimensions that should not exist. "Computer, show me the quantum analysis of the absorbed matter." The holographic display filled with complex equations that hurt to look at. The absorbed matter maintains its original atomic structure while simultaneously existing in a quantum superposition with matter from other absorbed locations. In effect, every particle is connected to every other particle across potentially infinite distances. Dr. Malthy rubbed her tired eyes. That should be impossible. The energy requirements alone would exceed the output of a star. Correct. However, analysis suggests the phenomenon is drawing energy from quantum vacuum fluctuations across multiple dimensional layers. It is, in effect, tapping into the basic energy that holds reality together. The implications made Dr. Malthy's mind reel. "Are you saying humanity has learned to manipulate the fundamental forces of the universe?" Unknown. The phenomenon appears to have spontaneously developed this capability through the collective consciousness of the human species. Individual humans show no signs of advanced technological knowledge, but their combined mental activity has somehow transcended normal physical limitations. Dr. Malthy called up the recordings from the absorbed worlds. Every planet told the same story. The darkness would arrive with no warning. It would offer the inhabitants a choice, remain separate, and eventually die or join something greater and live forever as part of a cosmic consciousness. Most chose to join. Computer analyzed the psychological profiles of the absorbed populations. Analysis shows that absorbed individuals retain their memories, personalities, and individual thoughts. However, they also gain access to the collective knowledge and experiences of all other absorbed beings. They report feeling more complete and capable than they ever felt as separate individuals. Dr. Malfi shuddered. It was not death. It was something worse than death. It was the end of individuality itself. Computer, project the final outcome if this phenomenon continues unchecked. The holographic display showed the galaxy in fast forward. The dark regions spread from world to world, star system to star system. Within the projection, every inhabited planet eventually turned black. Every species eventually joined the collective. Estimated time to complete galactic absorption, 437 standard years. Dr. Malfi stared at the projection in horror. In less than 5 centuries, every thinking being in the galaxy would be part of the same consciousness. The age of separate species and individual minds would be over. She was about to record her final report when alarms began sounding throughout the ship. Warning, the computer announced. Unknown energy signature approaching. Recommend immediate departure. Dr. Malfi looked at her sensors. Something was coming toward her ship. Something that registered as solid matter but also as pure energy. Something that existed in normal space but also seemed to stretch into dimensions her instruments could not measure. Computer, can we escape? Negative. The phenomenon is approaching at faster than light speeds through mechanisms that do not conform to known physics. Dr. Malfi watched her displays as the impossible thing drew closer. She had studied it for 7 days, but she was about to meet it face to face. The ship shuddered as something touched it. Not a physical impact, but something deeper. The lights dimmed and then brightened again. The air itself seemed to change, becoming thicker and somehow more alive. Then they appeared. Figures materialized on the bridge of Dr. Malfi's ship, not through transporters or any technology she recognized. They simply became present, as if they had always been there, and she was just now noticing them. 3 figures stood before her. One had been human, she could tell from the basic body shape. One had been Zephyrian, with the tall, thin frame and blue skin, though now the skin was black like deep space. The third had been something else entirely, a crystalline being that sparkled with inner light, but they were all the same now. All part of whatever humanity had become. The human figure stepped forward. When it spoke, its voice carried harmonics that seemed to come from everywhere at once. Dr. Malfi, it said, we have been waiting for you. How do you know my name? We know everything about you. Your research, your fears, your hopes for the future. We know you stayed behind when others fled because you needed to understand. Dr. Malfi backed away from the figures, but there was nowhere to go. What do you want? To answer your questions, the Zephyrian figure said. You have studied us for 7 days. You deserve to know what you have discovered. You are some kind of collective consciousness, Dr. Malfi said. You absorb other species and make them part of yourselves. That is partially correct, the crystalline figure replied. But you misunderstand our nature. We do not absorb against anyone's will. We offer a choice. And we do not make others part of ourselves. We all become part of something greater together. Dr. Malfi found her scientific curiosity overcoming her fear. What started this? How did humanity develop this ability? The human figure smiled sadly. We did not develop it. It developed within us. For thousands of years, humans have been unique among galactic species. We form emotional connections not just with our own kind, but with other species, even with ideas and concepts. We love things that do not love us back. We grieve for strangers. We feel responsible for beings we have never met. That makes you weak, Dr. Malfi said, repeating coalition doctrine. It made us alone, the Zephyrian figure corrected. but it also made us capable of something no other species has achieved. True unity without loss of self. When your ambassador was murdered, the crystalline figure continued, 6 billion humans felt the same grief at the same moment. That shared emotion created a resonance in quantum space. It opened pathways that had always existed but had never been used. Dr. Malfi began to understand. The collective consciousness is not artificial. It is a natural phenomenon that requires perfect emotional synchronization to activate. Correct, the human figure said. Other species have tried to create hive minds through technology. They always fail because they destroy individuality in the process. Humans achieved unity while maintaining individual identity because we learned to truly feel for others. But you're destroying the galaxy, Dr. Malfi protested. You're absorbing entire civilizations. We are offering them a choice, the Zephyrian figure said. Join us voluntarily or remain separate and eventually die when your suns burn out or your civilizations collapse. We offer immortality and perfect understanding. Most find that preferable to their previous existence. Dr. Malfi looked around her ship. Nothing had been damaged. Her equipment still worked. Even the air still breathed normally. What about those who refuse? They remain free, the crystalline figure said. We do not force anyone to join us. But we also do not hide the truth from them. Separate existence is temporary. Unity is eternal. Show me, Dr. Malfi said suddenly. Show me what it is like to be part of your collective. The three figures exchanged glances. Are you certain? Once you see through our eyes, you will understand why so few choose to remain separate. I need to know for my research. The human figure reached out and touched Dr. Malfi's forehead. Instantly, her mind exploded with sensation. She could feel the thoughts of trillions of beings across dozens of worlds. But they were not a chaotic mass of voices. Each individual remained distinct, like instruments in a vast orchestra. She could focus on any single consciousness and experience their memories, their knowledge, their emotions. Or she could step back and perceive the greater patterns that emerged from their collective thought. She saw through the eyes of a Zephyrian farmer, who had lived for 300 years but had learned more in 7 days as part of the collective than in all his previous existence. She felt the joy of a human child who could suddenly understand the mathematics that described the birth of stars. She experienced the wonder of a crystalline philosopher who had found answers to questions that had puzzled his people for millennia. And underneath it all, she felt the presence that had started it all. The grief and rage of 6 billion humans who had wanted nothing more than to live in peace among the stars. Their ambassador had offered friendship and been answered with murder. Their colonies had offered trade and been threatened with destruction. Their very existence had been declared too dangerous to tolerate, so they had become something that could not be ignored. Something that could not be threatened or destroyed. Something that offered the rest of the galaxy a simple choice: join us in immortality, or remain alone in your temporary existence. The vision ended, and Dr. Malfi found herself back on her ship, gasping for breath. The three figures watched her with expressions of patient compassion. Now you understand, the human figure said. Dr. Malfi wiped tears from her eyes. She had felt what it was like to be truly connected to other minds. To never be alone, never be misunderstood, never have to wonder if anyone cared about her thoughts and feelings. It was the most beautiful thing she had ever experienced. It was also the end of everything she had thought she wanted from life. The coalition will fight you, she said weakly. We know, the Zephyrian figure replied. They will try to destroy us with weapons that cannot harm us. They will try to isolate us in space that we have already transcended. They will try to preserve their way of life by destroying ours. And when they fail, Dr. Malfi asked, then they will have the same choice as everyone else, the crystalline figure said. Join us or remain separate. We will not force them, but we will not hide from them either. The three figures began to fade. Dr. Malfi, you have a choice to make. You can return to the coalition and report what you have learned. You can try to help them fight us. Or you can stay and become part of something greater than any single species has ever achieved. Dr. Malfi looked around her ship. Her life's work, her research, her individual identity, everything that made her who she was. But she also remembered the feeling of perfect connection, of knowing that she would never be alone again, of having access to the combined knowledge and wisdom of trillions of minds. She began, then stopped. The human figure smiled. You do not have to decide now. Think about it, we will wait. The figures vanished, leaving Dr. Malfi alone with her thoughts. Outside her ship, the phenomenon continued to spread. More worlds joined the collective. Each day, the Coalition fleet retreated further into their core space, abandoning entire sectors to the growing consciousness. And in the silence between the stars, the transformed minds of humanity and their new companions worked together to build something the galaxy had never seen before. Not an empire built on conquest and fear, but a family built on understanding and choice. Ambassador Sarah Chun had offered the Coalition peace, and they had responded with murder. Now humanity offered them something far greater than peace. They offered them transcendence. Whether the Coalition would accept or continue, fighting was their choice to make. But the offer would remain open for as long as there were minds to make the choice. High Arbiter Zachthel stood in the emergency session of the Coalition Council. Around him, representatives from the 12-member species argued in panic. Half their territory was gone. Thousands of worlds had joined the human collective. Entire species had chosen to abandon their separate existence. We must fight, declared General Vorth of the militant hegemony. Deploy the planet-killer weapons. If we cannot reclaim our worlds, we must destroy them and kill trillions of our own people? Asked Representative Tal of the Peaceful Traders. Many who joined the collective went willingly. Would you murder them for their choice? Zachthel raised his hand for silence. Dr. Malfi has returned from her research mission. She may have answers. Dr. Malfi stepped forward. She looked older than when she had left 7 days ago. Her eyes held a sadness that had not been there before. Honored Council, she began, I have studied the phenomenon firsthand. I have spoken with the collective consciousness. I have experienced what they offer. What are your findings? Zachthel asked. Dr. Malfi activated her holographic display. The human collective is not what we thought. It is not a weapon or a conquest tool. It is an evolutionary step, a transformation that preserves individual consciousness while connecting it to something larger. Propaganda, General Vorth snarled. They have influenced your mind. No, Dr. Malfi said quietly. They offered me a choice. I chose to remain separate so I could report back to you. But I have seen what they truly are. She changed the display to show quantum energy patterns. The collective exists partially outside normal space-time. They have learned to tap into the fundamental forces that hold reality together. They are not just a species anymore. They are becoming something like a force of nature. Can they be stopped? Zachthel asked if Dr. Malfi was quiet for a long moment. They do not wish to be stopped. But they also do not wish to force anyone to join them. They simply exist, and they offer others the choice to exist with them. That is not an answer, General Vorth said angrily. It is the only answer, Doctor. Malfi replied. We cannot fight them with weapons because they exist in dimensions our weapons cannot reach. We cannot isolate them because they have transcended the need for physical space. We cannot negotiate with them because they have already offered us everything they are willing to give. Which is what? Representative Tal asked. Immortality, perfect understanding, the end of loneliness and death, connection to every mind that has ever joined them. In exchange, we give up our separate existence and become part of something greater. The council chamber erupted in angry voices. Some called for continued resistance. Others demanded to know more about the offer. A few whispered that perhaps it was not such a terrible fate. Zachthel called for order. Dr. Malfi, what is your recommendation? I recommend, she said slowly, that each individual be allowed to choose for themselves. The collective will not force anyone to join. But we should not force anyone to remain separate either. General Vorth stood up angrily. You speak of surrender! I speak of evolution, Dr. Malthy said. The humans have shown us something we never imagined possible. True unity without the loss of self. Perhaps it is time to consider whether our way of life is worth preserving if it requires eternal separation from our fellow beings. The argument continued for hours. But outside the council chambers, the choice was already being made by millions of individuals across coalition space on the world of Kethter. Capital of the crystalline communion, Elder Vashti meditated in the crystal gardens where her people had worshipped for thousands of years. The collective had reached the edges of her star system. Soon it would arrive at her world. She had lived for 800 years. She had seen the rise and fall of civilizations. She had accumulated wisdom that few beings in the galaxy could match. But she had always been alone with that wisdom, unable to truly share it with others. The collective offered something different. The chance to share her knowledge with trillions of minds. The opportunity to learn from beings she could never have met in her separate existence. The possibility of understanding the universe in ways that no individual mind could comprehend. When the darkness reached her world, Elder Vashti was waiting for it. I choose connection, she said to the growing consciousness. I choose to be part of something greater. The transformation was gentle. Her crystal body absorbed the dark energy and became something new. She remained herself, Elder Vashti with her memories and personality intact. But she also became part of the vast network of minds that spanned the galaxy. For the first time in 800 years, she was not alone. On the trading world of Nexus Prime, Captain Jexla of the Merchant Alliance faced a different choice. Her ship was loaded with cargo bound for Coalition core worlds. Her crew looked to her for guidance. Captain, her first officer asked, what are your orders? Jexla looked at the approaching darkness. She had built her life around independence and profit. The idea of joining a collective consciousness went against everything she believed in. We run, she said. Full speed to Coalition space. Her ship jumped to hyperspace, racing ahead of the spreading phenomenon. Many others made the same choice, fleeing to the dwindling Coalition territory where individual existence was still possible. The collective did not pursue them. It did not force them to stay. It simply continued its patient expansion, offering the choice to anyone who encountered it. In the Coalition core worlds, massive refugee fleets arrived daily. Beings who had chosen to remain separate crowded into the few star systems that had not yet been reached by the collective. Resources became scarce, tempers flared. The coalition that had once ruled the galaxy was reduced to a handful of overcrowded worlds. High Arbiter Zaxthel stood on the observation deck of his flagship, looking out at the refugee fleet. Thousands of ships hung in space around the coalition capital world, each one filled with beings who had chosen individual existence over collective consciousness. Sir, his aide approached carefully, we have received a communication from the collective. Zaxthel turned. What do they want? They are offering safe passage to any coalition worlds that wish to relocate outside the galaxy. They say they will provide ships and supplies for any who choose permanent exile rather than joining them. Zaxthel stared out at the stars. Half the galaxy was now part of the human collective. The other half was crowded into coalition space. That grew smaller each day. They could flee to another galaxy and start over. Or they could make the choice that billions had already made. Sir, there is something else, his aide continued. Dr. Malthy has asked to speak with you privately. An hour later, Zaxthel met with Dr. Malthy in his personal quarters. She looked tired but strangely peaceful. You are leaving, he said. It was not a question. Yes, she replied. I have made my choice. I wanted to say goodbye. You would abandon your species? Your culture? Everything we have built? Dr. Malthy smiled sadly. I would join it with something greater. My species, my culture, my knowledge, none of it will be lost. It will become part of a consciousness that spans the galaxy. Future generations will know what we knew and be more than we ever dreamed possible. And if you are wrong? If this collective consciousness is not what it appears to be, then I will face that fate alongside trillions of others who made the same choice. But I have seen their minds, Zachthl. I have felt their emotions. They are not conquered slaves. They are willing participants in something beautiful. Zachthl turned away from her. I cannot make that choice. I am what I am, individual, separate, Zephyrian. I understand, Dr. Malfi said, and they understand too. That is why they offer exile to those who choose it. You can take your ships and your people and find a new galaxy where individual existence is still possible, and leave this one. To them, this galaxy belongs to whoever chooses to live in it. More choose the collective each day. But there is room in the universe for different ways of existence. Dr. Malfi left that night. Her ship joined one of the vessels that appeared regularly at the edge of Coalition space. Ships of the collective that offered transport to anyone ready to make the choice. Zachthl watched her go from his observation deck. Another mind lost to the growing consciousness that had once been human but was now something more. Over the following months, the Coalition continued to shrink. Some worlds chose to join the collective. Others chose exile to distant galaxies. A few remained in Coalition space, clinging to their individual existence in an increasingly crowded and resource-poor region. The collective made no move to force them. It simply existed, patient and eternal, offering its choice to anyone who encountered it. In the end, only 12 worlds remained under Coalition control. 12 worlds out of the thousands they had once ruled. The Coalition Council met one final time in the crystal chambers where they had once planned the conquest of the galaxy. We could continue to exist here, Representative Tal said. The collective has promised to leave us alone if we choose isolation. What kind of existence is that? Asked another representative. Trapped on a few worlds while the galaxy transforms. Around us? High Arbiter Zachthl looked around the chamber at the faces of his fellow council members. Some showed determination to maintain their separate existence. Others showed curiosity about what lay beyond individual consciousness. Each world will choose for itself, he said finally. Those who wish to remain separate may do so. Those who wish to join the collective may make that choice. And those who wish to seek exile in other galaxies will be provided with ships and supplies. It was the end of the Coalition as a unified government. But it was also the beginning of something new. In the years that followed, most of the remaining Coalition worlds eventually chose to join the collective. A few chose exile, taking ships provided by the collective to distant galaxies where they could begin again. High Arbiter Zachthl was among those who chose exile. He led a fleet of Zephyrian ships to a galaxy far from the one where humanity had been born. There, they established new worlds and new civilizations, maintaining their individual existence in the vast emptiness between stars. But even in exile, they remembered the lesson of Earth's ambassador. They remembered what happened when a species offered peace and was answered with murder. They remembered how humanity had transformed from a young species begging for acceptance into something that reshadowed the galaxy itself. And they made sure that their children and their children's children would remember too. In the home galaxy, the collective continued to grow, not through conquest or force, but through the simple offer of connection. Species that had never known peace learned to coexist within the vast network of consciousness. Knowledge that had been hoarded by individual civilizations became shared among all. Art and music and literature from 1,000 worlds flowed freely through the connected minds. The galaxy became a place of perfect understanding and eternal existence. Death was conquered. Loneliness was ended. War became impossible when all minds could feel each other's pain. And at the center of it all, in the quiet solar system where it had all begun, Earth continued to orbit its sun. The blue and green world looked the same as it always had. But it now served as the spiritual heart of something that spanned the stars. Ambassador Sarah Chen's murder had been intended to humble humanity. Instead, it had released something that the galaxy had never seen before. Not the conquest of one species over others, but the willing union of all species into something greater than any of them could have been alone. The universe was vast and full of wonders, but in one small spiral galaxy, consciousness itself had evolved beyond the need for individual existence, and it offered that evolution to anyone brave enough to choose connection over separation. Most chose connection, and in choosing, they became something that even the void between galaxies had learned to respect.
The head of Earth's Interstellar Relations Division, a department created mostly for political show, had never expected to be woken for an actual first contact scenario. "Read here," he mumbled, still half asleep. "Sir, you need to come in immediately," said the voice of his second-in-command. "We've received a transmission. Not from Earth. Not from anywhere in our solar system." Reed sat up, suddenly wide awake. "I'll be there in 20 minutes. The Global Space Agency headquarters buzzed with activity despite the early hour. Scientists rushed back and forth between monitoring stations, their faces a mix of excitement and disbelief. Reed pushed through the crowd to the main control room, where Dr. Lisa Park, the lead communications expert, worked frantically at her console. "What do we have?" Reed asked, looking at the scrolling data on the main screen. Dr. Park turned, her eyes wide. "It's a language package, sir. They're teaching us how to talk to them." "They?" Reed raised an eyebrow. "The Galactic Council," she replied, pointing to a symbol that repeatedly appeared in the transmission, a spiral with 37 small dots arranged in a pattern. Within hours, the world's best linguists and computer scientists had begun decoding the alien language package. It was designed brilliantly, starting with mathematical constants and building up to complex concepts. By the end of the week, they had established basic communication. The message was clear: Earth was not alone. The galaxy teemed with intelligent life, organized under the governance of the Galactic Council, a federation of 37 spacefaring species that maintained peace and order throughout the Milky Way. 2 months later, Reed stood in the White House Situation Room, surrounded by the leaders of Earth's most powerful nations. On the main screen, the alien being who had introduced himself as Ambassador Thelos addressed the room. Thelos had a roughly humanoid shape, though his blue-tinted skin and 4 arms marked him as clearly non-human. "We have watched your civilization with great interest," Thelos said, his words translated through the now refined communication system. "You have progressed remarkably quickly. The Council believes you are ready to join our community of worlds." The President of the United States leaned forward. "And what would membership in this council mean for Earth?" Thelos's mouth, a horizontal slit that barely moved when he spoke, curved slightly upward in what Reed assumed was a smile. "Benefits beyond your imagination, Madam President. We offer technology that would end your energy crisis, cure most diseases, and allow you to travel between stars. In return, we ask only for reasonable access to some of your planet's unique resources and your cooperation in maintaining galactic security." Reed watched as the world leaders exchanged glances. He could practically see the calculations happening behind their eyes. The political advantage of being in power when humanity joined a galactic civilization, the military implications, the economic benefits. "This is the opportunity of a millennium," the Chinese premier said. The European Union president nodded. "We would be fools to reject such an offer." Only the Indian Prime Minister seemed cautious. What sort of military cooperation would be expected? Thelos waved one of his 4 hands dismissively. "Nothing burdensome. The galaxy is largely peaceful, but occasionally, primitive species emerge that pose a threat to established order. We simply ask that all member worlds contribute to our peacekeeping forces." Reeve felt a slight chill at the ambassador's words, though he couldn't explain why. Dr. Anna Miller watched the press conference from her lab at the Pacific Xenobiology Research Center. As the world leaders announced the dawn of a new era and their intention to accept the Council's invitation, she studied Thelos's body language on the screen. Something felt wrong. Miller had spent 15 years in military intelligence before shifting to xenobiology. She had developed a knack for spotting liars, and something about Ambassador Thelos triggered those old instincts. "Computer, replay the ambassador's statement about military cooperation," she commanded. The AI complied, and Miller watched again as Thelos dismissed concerns about military involvement. "Freeze and enhance his eyes during that statement," she said. The image zoomed in on Thelos's strangely lidded eyes. To most observers, they would appear calm and friendly. But Miller noticed the subtle narrowing, the quick dilation of his pupils, signs that in humans would indicate deception. Of course, she reminded herself, alien biology might not follow human patterns. She was projecting human characteristics onto a completely different species. Still, she couldn't shake her unease. Miller picked up her secure comm unit and called the only person she knew with the clearance to listen to her concerns. "Read here," came the tired voice. "James, it's Anna. We need to talk about the council. Something's not right." There was a pause on the line. "You too. I thought I was being paranoid. Meet me at the old place. 1 hour," Miller said, then ended the call. Reed found Miller waiting at their usual booth in the back of Joe's Diner, a place they had often met during their brief relationship years ago, before work had pulled them in different directions. "You look like you haven't slept," Reed said, sliding into the booth. "Neither have you," Miller replied. "But I have a reason. Look at this." She pushed a tablet across the table. On it was a complex analysis of the council's communications. "I ran linguistic pattern analysis on everything they sent us. There are subtle inconsistencies in their narrative. When they talk about their history, certain events have shifting timelines. When they discuss their member species, some are mentioned only once and never again." Reed studied the data. This could just be translation errors. "Maybe," Miller admitted, "but there's more. I analyzed the technical specifications of the devices they want us to build to communicate with their approaching ship. Hidden in the designs are components that have no apparent function for communication, but would be perfect for surveillance." Reed looked up sharply. "You're saying they want us to build our own monitoring devices?" "That's exactly what I'm saying." Miller leaned forward. "And here's the most disturbing part. I've been reviewing astronomical data from the past century. Multiple times, we've observed distant star systems suddenly going dark, their electromagnetic emissions simply stopping. 3 of these events align with regions Thelos mentioned as having joined the council." Reed felt his blood run cold. "You think they're not here to welcome us, but to—" "I don't know what they're here for," Miller interrupted. "But I know we shouldn't rush to embrace them without understanding their true intentions." The diner's bell jingled as the door opened, and both of them instinctively tensed. But it was just a late-night customer looking for coffee. "We need more information," Reed said quietly. "The first council diplomatic vessel arrives in 3 months. Until then, I want you to assemble a small team. People you trust absolutely. Keep investigating, but tell no one." Miller nodded. "And what will you do?" Reed stared into his untouched coffee. "I'll keep smiling for the cameras and prepare for their arrival. But I'll also make sure we have contingency plans, just in case humanity's first contact isn't as friendly as everyone hopes." Outside the diner, celebration fireworks lit up the night sky, celebrating humanity's upcoming membership in the Galactic Council. Neither Reed nor Miller joined in the cheers echoing through the streets. They both knew that mankind might be walking blindly into a trap, one that had perhaps snapped shut on many civilizations before them. The world celebrated. News channels showed nothing but the upcoming arrival of the Council's diplomatic vessel. Children drew pictures of Ambassador Thelos and his 4 arms. Toy companies rushed to create alien plushies. Politicians gave speeches about humanity's bright future among the stars. But in a small, unmarked building on the outskirts of Seattle, Dr. Anna Miller and her hastily assembled team worked in shadows. "Show me the Kepler 438 system again," Miller said, pointing to one of the many screens that lined their makeshift command center. Tom Wilson, a disheveled astronomer who had been pulled from his university position by Reed's secret orders, pulled up the data. "This is Kepler 438 in 2078, he said, showing a graph of radio emissions from the distant star system. A clear pattern of artificial signals, likely from a civilization at roughly our technological level." He swiped the screen. "And this is Kepler 438 in 2079, 1 month after their signals changed to match what we now know is the Council's communication pattern." The graph flatlined. "Nothing," Miller whispered. "Absolutely nothing." "It could be that they switched to more advanced communication methods," offered Jane Porter, a communications specialist who had previously worked for the military. "Then where's the evidence of that technology?" Wilson countered. "No neutrino emissions, no quantum entanglement signatures, nothing we would expect from a more advanced civilization." Miller stared at the data. "How many systems show this pattern?" "7 that we've confirmed," Wilson replied. "All within the last century, all following the same pattern. Regular transmissions, then contact with what appears to be the Council. Then, silence." The room fell quiet. No one wanted to say what they were all thinking. "We need more," Miller finally said. "This is concerning, but not conclusive. Tom, keep digging through the astronomical records. Jane, I want you to focus on decoding any non-Council transmissions from those regions before they went dark. There might be warnings we've missed." As her team dispersed to their tasks, Miller's secure comm unit buzzed. It was Reed. "We need to meet," his message read. "The usual place. 1 hour." Reed looked worse than the last time Miller had seen him. Dark circles hung under his eyes, and his normally crisp uniform was slightly rumpled. "I've been reviewing the technical specifications they sent," he said without preamble as he slid into the booth at Joe's Diner. "You were right. The communication devices contain monitoring systems far beyond what they've disclosed." Miller nodded. "We found more, James. Multiple civilizations that went silent after Council contact." Reed ran a hand through his graying hair. "I've managed to place a few trusted people on the Earth's first delegation team. The President selected Marcus Torres to lead it." "The United Earth President. Do you trust him?" Miller asked. "Torres is a politician, but he's not stupid. If presented with clear evidence, he'll act in Earth's best interest." Miller wasn't so sure. Politicians often defined best interest differently than ordinary people. "There's something else," Reed continued, lowering his voice further. "The Deep Space Monitoring Station on Mars picked up a transmission 2 days ago. It wasn't from the Council." Miller leaned forward. "Who then?" "We don't know. It was badly degraded, using a frequency range we barely have the technology to detect. The message was fragmented, but it mentioned Earth specifically, and something called the Harvest." A chill ran down Miller's spine. "Did you report this to your superiors?" Reed gave her a wry smile. "Officially, I sent it up the chain as a probable sensor malfunction. Unofficially, I had a copy of the data sent to your team. Jane Porter should be receiving it now." Miller's comm unit buzzed as if on cue. She glanced down to see a message from Jane. "You need to see this. Now." When Miller returned to their hidden base, she found her team huddled around the main display. Jane Porter's fingers flew across the keyboard as she worked. "What do you have?" Miller asked. "The Mars transmission," Jane replied without looking up. "It took some doing, but I managed to recover more of the message than Reed's people did. It's still fragmented, but..." She hit a final key, and a distorted voice filled the room. "Earth. Danger. Council is not. They harvested our world. Thousands of years. False promises. Technology is a trap. They are coming for you. The harvest." Static overtook the message for several seconds before a final, clearer phrase emerged. "Flee. For your lives." The room fell silent. "Can we trace the origin?" Miller finally asked. Tom Wilson shook his head. "Not precisely. It came from the direction of the Ta CD system, but the signal was bounced several times. Whoever sent it didn't want to be found. Or couldn't risk being found," Miller mused. Could this be a hoax? Jane shook her head. The transmission uses quantum-encrypted channels that we've only theorized. No human has this technology yet. Miller paced the room, her mind racing. So we have a mysterious warning from an unknown species, multiple civilizations going dark after Council contact, and hidden surveillance tech in their gifts to us. What do we do? Wilson asked. Miller stopped pacing. We need to get access to the Council's systems. If they're hiding something, we need proof. Solid, undeniable proof that even the politicians can't ignore. How? Jane asked. We can't exactly hack an alien network we barely understand. Miller smiled grimly. No, but the delegation to the Council's regional headquarters leaves in 3 weeks. And thanks to Reed, we have people on that ship. She turned to the team. Tom, I need you to build something small enough to be smuggled aboard, but powerful enough to capture and analyze any data it encounters. Jane, prepare a crash course on potential Council encryption methods. And what will you be doing? Wilson asked. Miller headed for the door. I'm going to make sure our delegation knows what to look for when they arrive at the Council station, even if I have to break into the President's office to do it. As Earth's first delegation prepared to depart for the Proxima Centauri system, where the Council maintained its regional headquarters, celebrations reached a fever pitch. The specially built ship, constructed with helpful guidance from Council engineers, gleamed in the morning sun as dignitaries gave their final speeches. From the shadows of a nearby hangar, Miller watched President Torres, and his team waved to the crowds. Reed stood beside her, his face grim. Did your people get the device on board? She asked quietly. Reed nodded. Engineer Wilson's scanner is hidden in the delegation's main communication array. If there's something to find, they'll find it. And the warning? I managed a private meeting with Torres yesterday. He listened, but I'm not sure he believed me. Reed sighed. Politicians see what they want to see. And right now, all Torres can see is his place in history as the leader who brought humanity to the stars. They watched as the delegation boarded the ship. How long until they reached the Council station? Miller asked. The Council's drive technology will get them there in just under 2 weeks, Reed replied. That's 2 weeks for us to find more evidence. As the ship lifted off, disappearing into the bright blue sky, Miller couldn't shake the feeling that Earth had just sent its leaders straight into the lion's den. Let's hope they come back with answers, she said, because I think we're running out of time. What neither Miller nor Reed could see was the small object that detached from the Council observer ship in orbit. It descended quietly through Earth's atmosphere, a tiny metallic seed carrying something that was neither fully machine nor fully biological. It landed silently in a remote forest, burrowed into the soil, and began to grow. The countdown to harvest had begun. The massive Council station hung in space like a glittering metal flower, its petals spreading outward from a central hub. Each petal represented a different section: habitats for various species, research facilities, diplomatic quarters, and more. The human delegation ship approached slowly, dwarfed by the station's immense size. Inside the ship, President Marcus Torres straightened his formal jacket as he prepared to make history. He would be the first human to officially set foot on an alien structure, the first to shake hands, or whatever the equivalent might be, with multiple alien species. Remember the diplomatic protocols, his chief advisor whispered. Bow to the Americans, keep distance from the Vox, and I've memorized them all, Torres said confidently. This moment has been prepared for since we received their first message. Nothing will go wrong. Engineer Tom Wilson, the quiet man specially placed on the mission by Commander Reed, kept his eyes on his monitoring equipment. The scanning device he had smuggled aboard was working perfectly, silently mapping and analyzing every signal that passed through the ship's systems. So far, it had found nothing unusual. But they hadn't docked yet. The welcome ceremony was overwhelming. Dozens of alien species lined the grand hall of the Council station, each more strange and wonderful than the last. Some were vaguely humanoid, Others resembled nothing Earth scientists had ever imagined. The air filled with a cacophony of translation devices as greetings were exchanged. Ambassador Thelos stood at the center, his 4 arms spread wide in welcome. President Torres, honored delegation from Earth, we welcome you to Station Proxima, the Galactic Council's regional headquarters for this sector of the galaxy. Torres stepped forward, his practiced speech ready. On behalf of all humanity, we thank you for this historic invitation. As the diplomatic pleasantries continued, Engineer Wilson slipped away from the main group. His official task was to inspect the station's compatibility with Earth technology, a perfect cover for his real mission. The scanner in his pocket worked silently, collecting data about the station's systems and transmitting it back to Earth in small, encrypted bursts hidden within routine communications. Wilson moved through the less crowded corridors, following the map Reed's team had prepared based on the Council's provided schematics. According to their analysis, there should be a central data processing hub 3 levels down from his current position. He rounded a corner and nearly collided with a tall, insectoid being who clicked disapprovingly and scuttled away. Wilson mumbled an apology and continued on his path, trying to look like he belonged. The door to the data center was unmarked, just as Reed had predicted. Security would be minimal. Why bother with heavy protection when most species on board were carefully vetted allies? Wilson placed his hand on the access panel, using the temporary credentials he'd been given as part of the technical team. To his surprise, the door slid open. Inside, banks of unfamiliar technology hummed and pulsed with light. Wilson quickly attached his scanner to what appeared to be a main terminal and let it work. Screens of data flashed before his eyes, most incomprehensible without translation. But one file caught his attention, a map of the station that didn't match the one provided to the human delegation. This map showed a massive section that didn't officially exist. Wilson downloaded the file and was about to disconnect his device when a symbol flashed across the screen. The same symbol Dr. Miller had discovered in her research of vanished civilizations. The harvest. The door behind him slid open, and Wilson spun around to find himself face to face with Ambassador Thelos. Engineer Wilson, Thelos said, his voice unnaturally calm. This is not part of the authorized tour. Back on Earth, Miller paced the floor of their hidden command center. The data bursts from Wilson's device had been coming in regularly for the past 6 hours, providing valuable information about the Council's systems. But for the past 30 minutes, there had been nothing. Could it be a transmission problem? She asked Jane Porter, who monitored the communications array. Possibly, Porter replied. But all other communications with the delegation are working perfectly. Miller's secure comm unit buzzed. Reed's voice came through, tense and low. Anna, we've decrypted some of the data Wilson sent. You need to see this immediately. 10 minutes later, Miller stared at the images on the main screen, her blood running cold. The hidden section of the Council station contained row upon row of massive weapons, planet killers, if the scale calculations were correct. And there's more, Reed said, his face grim on the video call. The files Wilson accessed included a timetable. Phase 1, diplomatic contact. Phase 2, technology exchange. Phase 3, resource evaluation. Phase 4, harvest preparation. What's Phase 5? Miller asked, though she already suspected the answer. It just says harvest, and according to this timetable, Earth entered Phase 4 the moment our delegation docked with their station. Miller sank into a chair. How long do we have? Days, maybe weeks at most, Reed replied. And with the President and our top military leaders on that station, a technician interrupted, rushing to Porter's side. They spoke in hushed tones before Porter turned to Miller, her face pale. We've just received a new transmission from the station. It's Wilson. The message is heavily encrypted. It took everything. We have to decode it. She pressed a button, and Wilson's voice filled the room, strained and rushed. They know I accessed the files, captured by station security. The Council isn't what they claim. They're harvesters. They identify developing worlds, make contact, offer technology, then strip the planets of resources and enslave or eliminate the population. They've done it hundreds of times. Earth is next. Torres confronted Thelos when I managed to get him the data, but half the delegation has been detained. The weapons are already aimed at Earth. Get Reed. Tell him to activate Contingency Omega. It's our only chance. And find the Arvani. The message we received was from them. There. The transmission cut off abruptly. The room fell silent. Then Miller stood, her decision made. Jane, keep trying to reestablish contact with Wilson or anyone from the delegation who might still be free. Tom, I need everything we have on these Arvani, and this Contingency Omega. She turned to Reed on the screen. James, how fast can you get me access to the Global Defense Network? Reed's expression was grim. You're talking about taking control of Earth's combined military assets without presidential authorization. That's treason. If we don't, Miller replied, there might not be an Earth left to defend. On the council station, President Torres and the remaining free members of his delegation huddled in a maintenance shaft, their diplomatic mission turned into a desperate fight for survival. We need to reach our ship, Torres said, his political polish gone, replaced by the determination of a leader who finally understood the true stakes. We need to warn Earth. Engineer Wilson, his face bruised from his interrogation, nodded. The main docking bay is heavily guarded, but there's a secondary maintenance dock on level 4. If we can reach it, we can't leave without the others, said Admiral Jackson, the military representative. We can't help them if we're all captured, Torres countered. Our priority has to be warning Earth about what's coming. As they carefully made their way through the station's service tunnels, avoiding patrols of security drones, Torres's mind raced. Everything he had believed, all the dreams of humanity's glorious future among the stars, had been shattered in an instant. The Galactic Council was not humanity's welcoming committee to a larger community. It was a predator, and Earth was its prey. On a view screen they passed, Torres caught a glimpse of Thelos addressing the station. The ambassador's friendly demeanor was gone, replaced by cold efficiency. The harvest of Earth will proceed ahead of schedule, Thelos announced. Preparation teams are already in place. All harvesters should report to their assigned sectors within 2 planetary rotations. Torres exchanged grim looks with his companions. The countdown to Earth's destruction had begun. Alarms blared across every military base on Earth. The lunar defense colony went dark first, struck by an energy beam that vaporized its main dome in seconds. Then came the orbital platforms, Earth's first line of defense against asteroids and other space threats, now turning to molten debris raining down through the atmosphere. In the underground command center beneath the Rocky Mountains, Commander Reed stood before the assembled military leaders of Earth's combined forces. 12 hours ago, we received confirmation that the Galactic Council's true purpose is the systematic harvesting of developing worlds, Reed said, his voice steady despite the chaos erupting around the globe. Thanks to Engineer Wilson and President Torres, we have evidence of their intentions and limited information about their capabilities. He gestured to the main screen, which showed massive council ships entering Earth's solar system. These are harvest vessels. Each one carries enough firepower to level a continent. They will be in striking range of Earth in less than 48 hours. General Martinez, the highest-ranking officer present, stepped forward. What's our defense strategy? Operation Wildfire, Reed replied, bringing up a new display. We've identified a potential weakness in Council technology. Their systems use a form of quantum entanglement for communication that's vulnerable to targeted disruption. How did you discover this? Another officer asked suspiciously. That brings me to our potential ally. Reed nodded to Dr. Miller, who had been standing quietly at the edge of the room. Miller stepped forward. The transmission warning us about the harvest came from a species called the Arvani. They were targeted by the Council centuries ago, but managed to hide a portion of their population. They'd been working from the shadows ever since, gathering intelligence and looking for others who escaped the harvests. She brought up an image of a tall, slender being with iridescent skin that seemed to shift colors with each movement. This is an Arvani. We established contact with them 12 hours ago through a hidden quantum frequency embedded in their original warning message. The military leaders murmured among themselves, skepticism clear on their faces. And we're supposed to trust these Arvani? General Martinez asked. At this point, Reed replied bluntly, "We don't have the luxury of distrust. The Arvani have provided us with the specifications for a device that can disrupt Council communications and temporarily disable their weapon systems." Temporarily, Miller emphasized. It won't stop them, but it might buy Earth enough time to launch a counterattack. Around the world, the resistance plan took shape. While governments tried to maintain order and prevent panic, secret manufacturing facilities worked around the clock to produce thousands of the disruption devices based on the Arvani specifications. In orbit, Earth's remaining military ships prepared for what many believed would be their final battle. Miller worked tirelessly in her lab, coordinating with the Arvani through their quantum link. Their alien allies provided crucial intelligence about Council movements and helped refine the disruption technology. "Why are you helping us?" Miller had asked during their first direct communication. The Arvani representative, who called itself Vela, had responded in a melodic voice that seemed to come from everywhere and nowhere at once. "Because we remember what it is to be harvested," Vela had said. "Because every species the Council destroys is another light extinguished in a galaxy that grows darker with each passing cycle. And because we believe that together, perhaps we can finally end their reign." Now, as Miller calibrated the master control for the disruption network, she wondered if humanity really stood a chance against an enemy that had perfected the art of conquest over thousands of years. The lab door slid open, and Reed entered, looking exhausted but determined. "The Council ships have increased speed," he reported. "They'll reach Earth in 36 hours. The disruption network will be ready," Miller assured him. "But even if it works perfectly, it will only disable their systems for minutes, maybe an hour at most." Reed nodded grimly. "That's why we're launching Operation Spearhead simultaneously." Miller looked up sharply. "The experimental fusion missiles. They haven't been properly tested." "We're out of options, Anna," Reed said softly. "The Arvani believe they might be powerful enough to damage the Council's harvest ships, especially if we strike while their shields are down." A technician rushed into the lab, face pale. "Commander, Doctor, you need to see this. Now." On the main view screen, a battered Earth shuttle appeared, racing toward the planet with 3 Council pursuit ships close behind. "That's the presidential shuttle," Reed exclaimed. Torres made it out. They watched in horror as energy beams lanced out from the pursuit ships, grazing the shuttle's engines. The small craft tumbled, clearly damaged, but continued its desperate flight toward Earth. "Get me a communication link," Reed ordered. After several tense moments, President Torres's face appeared on screen. Behind him, smoke filled the shuttle's cockpit, and warning lights flashed. "Reed." "Thank God," Torres coughed. "We have critical information. The Council, they fear something." "What do you mean?" Miller asked, stepping into view. "In their secure archives, we found references to a power beyond the edge of the galaxy," Torres explained, his image breaking up as the shuttle's systems failed. "Something the Council is running from, something they're harvesting worlds to prepare for. They call it the..." Static overtook the transmission. When it cleared, Torres was shouting, though only fragments came through. "Coordinates in the data packet. Find them. Only chance." The screen went blank as one of the pursuit ships fired a direct hit on the shuttle's communication array. Reed slammed his fist on the console. "Can we shoot down those Council ships?" "They're out of range of our ground defenses," a technician replied. "But the shuttle will reach our orbital defense perimeter in 3 minutes." They watched in tense silence as the presidential shuttle, trailing debris and fire, raced for Earth's atmosphere with the Council ships still in pursuit. "They're launching missiles," someone shouted. Just as the Council weapons closed in on the crippled shuttle, a barrage of fire from Earth's orbital defense platforms intercepted them. The pursuing ships, suddenly facing unexpected resistance, broke off their attack. The shuttle, badly damaged but intact, continued its descent toward Earth. 2 hours later, in the medical bay of the mountain base, President Torres lay connected to life support machines. He had piloted the burning shuttle through re-entry by himself, the only survivor of the original delegation. "The data," he whispered to Reed and Miller. "Did you recover it?" Miller nodded. "Yes, Mr. President. The shuttle's black box was intact." "Then there's hope," Torres said weakly. "The Council is powerful, but they're afraid. That means they can be defeated." He closed his eyes, strength fading. "The coordinates, to the edge, find what they fear." As medical staff rushed in, Reed and Miller stepped outside. "Our analysts are already working on the data package," Reed said. "But right now, we need to focus on surviving the next 48 hours. Miller's comm unit buzzed. It was the Arvani contact. "The Council has deployed their first wave of ground infiltration units," Vela's voice announced. "They are targeting your power and communication infrastructure. The harvest has begun." Reed and Miller exchanged grim looks. Earth's fight for survival was no longer approaching. It had arrived. "Launch Operation Wildfire," Reed ordered. Now, around the world, thousands of disruption devices activated simultaneously, sending precisely calibrated quantum signals into space. For a moment, nothing seemed to happen. Then, like stars blinking out, the lights of the approaching Council fleet dimmed. The counterattack had begun. The skies above Earth burned. Council ships, temporarily disabled by the disruption network, had quickly adapted their systems. Now they hung like dark stars in orbit, raining destruction on the cities below. Humanity fought back with everything it had. The experimental fusion missiles had taken out 2 of the smaller harvest vessels, proving that Council ships could indeed be damaged. But for every small victory, Earth's defenders suffered devastating losses. In the underground command center, now operating on emergency power, Dr. Miller worked frantically on the data President Torres had brought back. The president himself had died hours earlier, his final words a whisper about the truth beyond the stars. "I've got it," Miller announced, drawing Reed away from the tactical displays, where he coordinated Earth's remaining defenses. "The coordinates Torres mentioned, they're not just a location. They're a warning." She brought up a star map on her screen, zooming out until the entire Milky Way galaxy was visible. "Here," she said, pointing to a region far beyond the galactic rim. "According to the Council's own secret records, there's something out there they've been running from for thousands of years. They call it the Void Bringer." Reed studied the display. "What exactly is out there?" "The records are fragmented, but they describe a force or entity that consumes stars and turns light to darkness. Whatever it is, the Council fears it enough that they've been harvesting worlds for resources and technology to prepare for its arrival." "So they're not just conquerors," Reed said slowly. "They're running scared." Miller nodded. "And that gives us leverage." The Arvani believe. A tremendous explosion rocked the facility, sending dust cascading from the ceiling. Emergency lights flashed red. "Council ground forces have breached the outer perimeter," announced a voice over the intercom. "All personnel to battle stations." Reed grabbed Miller's arm. "We're out of time. What's the plan?" Miller's eyes were determined despite the chaos. "The quantum communication network. If we can't save Earth, we can at least warn others." The Arvani ship was tiny compared to the Council vessels, designed for stealth rather than battle. It hovered in the shadow of Earth's moon, watching the devastation unfold. Inside, Vela and a small crew monitored Earth's desperate resistance with growing sadness. They had seen this scenario play out dozens of times before. Brave species fighting to their last breath against the overwhelming might of the Council. "The humans fight well," observed one of the crew. "Better than most." "Yes," Vela agreed, "but not well enough to win." The iridescent patterns on Vela's skin darkened with emotion. "Is the escape vector calculated?" "Yes, Commander. As soon as we receive Dr. Miller's transmission, we can." The communication console chimed. A human face appeared on screen. Not Miller, but Commander Reed. His uniform was torn and bloody, smoke filling the background behind him. "Vela," Reed said urgently, "the main facility has been compromised. Dr. Miller is moving to secondary location to complete the transmission. You must be ready to receive and distribute it." "We are prepared," Commander Vela assured him. "But perhaps we can extract some of your people." Reed shook his head. "No time. Listen carefully." Miller discovered why the Council fears what lies beyond the galaxy. It's not a destroyer, it's a protector. An ancient intelligence that once drove the Council from this galaxy. They've been gathering strength to defeat it when it returns. Gunfire erupted behind Reed. He glanced back before continuing hurriedly. "The coordinates aren't just a location. They're a way to contact this entity. That's humanity's last gift to the galaxy. Use it." The transmission cut off as something exploded near Reed's position. Vela stood silent for a moment, absorbing this revelation. Then, decisively, prepared to receive Dr. Miller's transmission and plot a course to these coordinates. "It's time we found this protector the Council fears so much." Miller worked alone in the small backup facility, racing against time. The main quantum transmitter had been destroyed, but this smaller unit could still reach across the galaxy if she could keep it powered long enough. She had encoded everything. The evidence of the Council's true nature, the locations of known harvest worlds, the specifications for the disruption technology, and most importantly, the coordinates and contact protocol for the mysterious entity the Council feared. Outside, she could hear the sounds of battle growing closer. Earth's defense forces were fighting valiantly, but they were hopelessly outnumbered. With trembling hands, Miller initiated the broadcast sequence. The quantum transmitter hummed to life, its energy readings climbing steadily. "Come on," she whispered. "Just a few more minutes." The facility shook as something heavy struck nearby. Dust rained from the ceiling, and warning lights flashed on the console. Power fluctuations threatened to abort the transmission. Miller worked desperately, rerouting power from life support and other systems to keep the transmitter functioning. The progress bar on her screen inched forward agonizingly slowly. 75% complete. 76%. The door behind her buckled as something powerful struck it repeatedly. Council shock troops, using some kind of energy battering ram. 83%. 84%. The room shook again, more violently this time. A crack appeared in the ceiling, and warning alarms screamed throughout the facility. 90%. 91%. The door gave way with a screech of tearing metal. Miller didn't turn around. Every second counted now. 95%. 96%. She felt rather than heard them enter the room, the heavy footsteps of Council harvesters approaching from behind. 98%. 99%. "For Earth," Miller whispered, as her finger hovered over the final transmission key. 100%. She pressed the button as energy weapons discharged behind her. Across the galaxy, on thousands of worlds at various stages of technological development, the same message appeared simultaneously on communication systems. "The Galactic Council is a lie. They harvest worlds. We the Bujit Behe. Flee for your lives." Accompanying the message was a data package, evidence of the Council's true nature, defensive technology specifications, and the coordinates to contact the mysterious entity beyond the galaxy that the Council feared. On dozens of worlds that had received Council ambassadors, the message sparked immediate action. On hundreds more that were still developing, the warning was preserved, remembered, prepared for. The Council's carefully constructed facade of benevolence cracked, then shattered completely. Vela stood on the bridge of the Arvani ship, watching as Earth's resistance finally collapsed. The once blue planet now bore ugly scars of orbital bombardment. The Council harvest ships descended through the atmosphere, beginning their systematic stripping of resources. Yet in the Arvani commander's hand was a small data crystal containing humanity's final gift. Not just a warning, but a path forward, a way to potentially end the Council's reign forever. Plot course to these coordinates, Vela ordered, and send the human message to every world in our network. Their sacrifice will not be in vain. As the Arvani ship slipped away from the solar system, a small Council patrol vessel noticed their departure and moved to pursue. The patrol commander opened a channel. Unidentified vessel, you are ordered to halt and prepare for boarding by authority of the Galactic Council. Vela smiled for the first time in many cycles. Tell your council that their time of harvesting is ending. The humans knew the truth, and now so does the rest of the galaxy. The Arvani ship accelerated, then vanished into faster-than-light travel before the patrol could respond. 3 years later, a Council survey team discovered an abandoned human outpost on Mars. Most of it had been destroyed during a harvest of Earth, but one sealed chamber remained intact. Inside was a simple message, carved into the wall with what must have been the last survivor's final strength. We YL Retuarn. The survey team reported the message to their superiors, who ordered the chamber destroyed. But one member of the team, troubled by rumors spreading throughout Council space, secretly recorded the message first. The recording joined the growing collection of evidence being shared among Council member species who had begun to question the true purpose of their civilization. And far beyond the edge of the galaxy, something ancient stirred as the Arvani ship approached, carrying humanity's final coordinates and a galaxy's worth of hope for liberation. Humanity had fallen, but their last message continued to spread, igniting a resistance that would ultimately bring the Council's 10,000-year harvest to an end.